That's called prematurity. So the idea is we want to try to prevent these preventable pregnancy issues. And what we know today that we didn't know when I was in school in the 60s and 70s, and even when I was practicing for the majority of the time, and that is a significant role that nutrition plays. And when I started really delving into this in the 80s and 90s, it became very apparent to me that if we could reduce inflammation and chronic inflammation, and if we could reduce oxidative stress, um, then we would have healthier pregnancies. So, what is oxidative stress? It's simply when our body has too many, when we're generating too many free radicals. And a free radical, without being too scientific, is an oxygen compound missing an electron. But we really want to neutralize these free radicals. So, what we need to do is we need to look for electron donors. So, what's the definition of an antioxidant? It's an electron donor. So, where do we get electron donors or antioxidants? We get them from plants. And in fact, we like to call them phytonutrients, phytochemicals. Phyto means plants, because that's where we get 99% of all of the uh, electron donors is from plant food, and specifically, and the majority of these come from fruits and vegetables and berries. So in the mid to late 90s, when I was looking for where can I find an easy, um, affordable, reproducible um, electron donor solution, uh, I actually found Juice Plus. I would love to say that someone shared information with me, but I was so actively looking for it that when I did find it, it made so much sense. Uh, I ordered it the day I heard about it, and I haven't looked back, and that's been 25, almost 25 years ago. So this is so significant for all of us because we've underplayed the real value and the real benefit of eating healthy. And what does eating healthy really mean? Uh, I try to break it down uh, to addition and subtraction. I try to break it down to eat as many plant foods as you can. That's the addition. And subtraction, let's try to eliminate those foods that really don't benefit the body at all. But we're um, we're so connected with so many of them because of taste and pleasure, and but that's not why we should be eating. But we love to eat processed food, and processed food is pretty much anything that comes in a box or a package. And we need to focus really on foods that don't even have a label. I had patients come to me and say, "You'd be so proud of me, doctor. I learned how to read labels." And I'd say, "Great, let's take it to the next level and let's try to eat foods that don't even require a label." Well, that's what Juice Plus is. It's literally 33 foods. We have three blends: a fruit, a vegetable, and a berry blend. And when you can be consistent consuming these, it absolutely reduces this oxidative stress, free radical damage, and chronic inflammation. And when you can do that, then your symptoms tend to be less and less and less. And so that's some of the science behind why Juice Plus is so beneficial during a pregnancy. Um, so, in your instance, Hillary, when you're with your third pregnancy, your body, because you had been on Juice Plus for several years when you were carrying your third child, your body was moving toward a state of what's called homeostasis. That's a condition where your body is simply in balance. Um, and the more we can be in balance, the more everything in the body works in harmony. And that's your hormones. That's whether you conceive in the first place. It's whether you're ovulating. It's also whether your immune system. You were talking about your little one only going in for really well visits, um, and that's because 85% of your immune system resides in your intestinal tract, And what we know today that I didn't even know back in the 90s, most doctors didn't know this, uh, is that our gut health, what's going on in our intestinal tract, is directly related to your overall health. And that includes pregnancy, postpartum, and nursing period. So, what do we do to try to get our gut in harmony or in balance? And the idea is that we have 10 trillion human cells. That's a trillion. That's 12 zeros on top of a 10. So that's a lot of cells, but we actually are hosting over 100 trillion bacteria. These bacteria reside primarily in your intestinal tract and specifically, most of them in your large intestine. It's also called your colon. So we have about 10 to 20,000, not trillion, species of these bacteria. And what we know is that most of these bacteria belong to one of two groups. I've heard good and bad. We don't like using those words, but we like beneficial and non-beneficial. And the beneficial bacteria, when we have a predominance of beneficial bacteria, we tend to have excellent health. When we have the reverse of that, when we have a predominance of the non-beneficial bacteria, what we tend to have is disease, illness, and symptomatology. So what is it that feeds our non-beneficial bacteria? What we know today is that it's that processed food that I mentioned. It's sugar and sugar substitutes. It's gluten. It's dairy. It's too much animal source anything. So it's not that animal is bad for us. We just eat far too much. We eat not nearly enough plant food. So if we can reverse those proportions, we can improve our overall health. On the contrary, and when excuse me, when we have these non-beneficial bacteria that are predominating, it leads to a condition called gut permeability. It's also called leaky gut, if you've ever heard that term. It's just where you have the wrong bacteria uh, predominate in the intestinal tract. So, how can we fix that? We can fix that with one simple change. We can fix that with what it takes to feed the beneficial bacteria. And what we know, what predominantly feeds the good bacteria, the beneficial bacteria, is fiber and phytonutrients, those components that are found trapped inside the fiber in fruits and vegetables and berries and other plant food like seeds and beans and nuts. So the more plant food, the more fiber, the more we're feeding the beneficial bacteria. When that happens, then that's one way to help reduce the symptoms from leaky gut. That's one way to reduce the symptoms from autoimmune diseases. It's one way to reduce, I think you mentioned, Hillary, acid reflux. It's one way that we found that we can reduce the inflammation and the oxidative stress, free radical damage that's occurring during a pregnancy. So the last 4 years that I delivered, ending in 2002, we had over 242 moms in a controlled study at my practice where we pretty much eliminated pregnancy-induced hypertension, also called preeclampsia. We pretty much eliminated gestational diabetes. We pretty much eliminated toxemia of pregnancy, which is huge. And we pretty much eliminated premature delivery, which is where a baby's born more than 3 weeks early. And unfortunately, when we look at the amount of money that's spent in pregnancy conditions, the majority of the money is spent when babies are born significantly premature, not just a full-term pregnancy is 40 weeks and not just a 36 or 37 week baby, but when they're born, some of them before 30 weeks, and then they have to stay in the neonatal intensive care nursery, sometimes for weeks and sometimes even longer, months. So we can reduce an awful lot of that expenditure by spending a little bit of money on the front end and emphasize the importance of eating more plant foods and trying to reduce the inflammation that's associated with those foods that I mentioned. So we also know that it's not just the gut bacteria that we're trying to influence and trying to change, but there's a whole new emerging area in pregnancy science, and it's called nutrigenomics, and it's the role that nutrition plays in turning our genes on and off. And what we know is that we have about 23,000 genes, 23,000 genes, and the Human Genome Project was completed about a decade and a half ago, and this is where all the genes were sequenced. And we know today that the foods that we eat can cause these genes to be turned on or turned off. They're activated, or the common term is called genetic expression. We can turn these genes on and off, just like a light switch. You can't change your DNA, but you can change whether genes are expressed or not. And when we're eating plant food, the more plant food we're realizing, we are turning on protective genes and turning off destructive genes. And isn't that amazing that now we have all this information and knowledge, and we still are eating so poorly in this country because so few people really understand these concepts, that good food protects your healthy cells. Good food turns on healthy genes, protective genes. Good food feeds your good bacteria, your beneficial bacteria. And when I'm saying good food, I'm talking good plant food. And that means plant food that hasn't been processed to death, cooked, irradiated, heated, and changed, altered. So the more plant food, the better. And when we look at what is Juice Plus, it's the phytonutrients and it's the fiber that are found in over, when you look at everything we have, over 50 foods, and some of it is in a blend, a vegetable blend, some in a fruit blend, some in a berry blend, some that you mentioned, Hillary, the omegas that are from seeds and berries and algae. These are healthy fats in the right proportion, omega 3s and omega 6s. And that's another area where we're in balance. We have far too many omega 6s and not nearly enough omega 3s. And then the other thing that we offer is plant protein, which we all need. It's anti inflammatory, and we don't eat nearly enough of that. So we have a powder that we use. A lot of people use them in different ways, but we use them to make smoothies, and that's our breakfast in the morning. And that gives us not only plant protein, but it gives us fiber. It gives us that precious fiber that feeds our beneficial bacteria, so that's the predominant bacterial proportion, so that we are feeding the good bacteria. Uh, so all of that together, how does all of this affect a pregnancy? The same way that it does somebody that's not even thinking of a pregnancy, somebody that even a man or a woman that's not old enough to conceive, or a woman maybe that's through with her reproductive time, and But it benefits all of us, and it's not just for pregnancy issues, but this oxidative stress, inflammation, uh, chronic inflammation, all of this affects all of us. And if you just think about oxidative stress, ages us. It causes us to age much, much faster. It's the common denominator for all chronic disease. So the more we can reduce that, the longer we live without symptomatology, without disease and illness. And the same thing with the pregnancy. As the pregnancy progresses from 3 weeks to 5 to 6 weeks to 10 to 12 to 15 to 20, 20 weeks is about half of your pregnancy time, unless you're Allison and she loves going over, I guess. That's supposed to be a joke. I know she doesn't love that. We miss you, Allison. I hope you're in labor right now. We miss your comments because I know they were going to be pertinent tonight. But what we do know is that the better we eat in a pregnancy, the lower the risk of all these chronic diseases. It can be catastrophic, can be serious. Uh, so to make a significant change, we feel that it's really important to start Juice Plus as early as you can. And if you can even start before conception, that's better. It's even better if your partner uh, is is consuming Juice Plus as well. He's contributing half the DNA. He's making a major contribution. Once conception occurs, then whatever he does, it's not important, but it is for the mom, and it's very important that she continue to feed the baby and her own cells with his positive a mental approach and a positive nutritional approach as she can have. And what we know is that the foundation of health is nutrition, and the foundation of nutrition is a diet that's full of fruits and vegetables and berries. The good news is this is real food. You can't overdose this. People have asked me, well, look, we've been doing prenatal vitamins long before Juice Plus. Why not just do that? Doesn't that carry enough weight, and doesn't that prevent enough complications? And my answer is always, it's not nearly enough. There are only 13 vitamins, and most of those vitamins, all of them, in fact, most 11 of those are found in Juice Plus. Uh, One is B12, that's found in animal sources primarily, and the other is vitamin D. That's a sunshine vitamin, and you're not going to eat many foods that have even close to what you need in that regard from just a plant-based source. So the more plants, the better. You again, because this is balanced nutrition, you're not going to overdose. You're not going to have a problem, and we even have a way to grow our own, and you can get with whoever invited you to this call. They can tell you about the Tower Garden and about that option. But I would encourage all of you to consider adding over 50 foods with our fruit, vegetable, berry blend, our omega blend, and our complete powder. So why don't I stop there, Sally Beth? I'm happy if anybody has questions, or if you have any, or if it's an area you want me to talk more about, I'll be glad to